Strange superheroes and their stranger superpowers are often regarded as the playground of the boys. I'm talking about the Garth Ennis comics. But you know what? Marvel is no stranger to such obnoxious superheroes and superpowers. From people who poop ice cream and use death as energy to people who can sweat and puke acid, you'll find a bit of everyone. In fact, there's this one guy who's actually codenamed Golden Balls. So in this video, I'm going to explore the 10 absolutely weirdest X-Men powers and their wielders. But before I begin, please consider hitting those like and subscribe buttons. Those 2 small clicks from you will help us tremendously in bringing you more of these marvelous videos. And now, let's check out the ice cream poopers and whatnot. Ice Cream. The first one on our list today is called Ice Cream. Sounds like a child killer from the 80s who used ice cream trucks to take his little victims, but no, Ice Cream is not that dark. But what does this guy do? Well, he can turn into literally any ice cream flavor. So yeah, his powers were cool, literally cool, and if you think about it, that's not very cool when your mutant buddies can fly into the sky bringing storms, or smoke cigars and ride awesome bikes while remaining immortal. And that didn't sit well with him. Embittered, he decided to take down the X-Men by sneaking into Xavier's school. Unfortunately for him, he picked the worst day possible. It was Kitty Pryde's birthday, and the guest of honor was Obnoxio the Clown. In fact, most of Ice Cream's story has been explained in the comic about Obnoxio. So Professor X spotted Ice Cream on Cerebro, but the signal fried the machine and the professor found himself knocked out. Next thing we know, alarms blared, Obnoxio arrived, and in the mess that followed, Ice Cream oozed into the danger room as literal ice cream. He watched from the shadows as Obnoxio somehow held off the X-Men by himself in the danger room, which left Ice Cream feeling even more useless. So he now wanted to eliminate Obnoxio as well. While Ice Cream tried to trap the clown, Xavier came too and used the danger room controls to freeze the booth where Ice Cream had been hiding. Solidified into a frozen block, Ice Cream was scooped up and decorated like a sundae by Obnoxio, who left without even doing the birthday gig. Years later, Ice Cream found his way to Krakoa. Turns out, he wasn't done being weird. He joined Bishop's response team during the Milford crisis, but instead of combat, he helped by giving free ice cream to the small kids. Yep, small victories, but victories nonetheless. Interestingly, he's not even the only one with dessert-based powers. Krakoa also has Soft Serve, a mutant who poops ice cream. According to artist Bob Quinn, the two aren't related, but Soft Serve is a huge fan, which honestly makes Ice Cream's whole life weirder and somehow more wholesome. Sort of. Axel Clooney, aka Zeitgeist. Axel Clooney, better known as Zeitgeist, was a mutant with a power no one would really want. Wondering what he could do? Well, this gentleman could vomit highly corrosive bile or ooze from his mouth, kinda like a more disgusting and human version of a xenomorph. At least they have acidic blood, and not acidic vomit. So this guy with the world's worst case of acidic reflux could spew his stuff onto other stuff, and it could eat through almost anything, including steel. The first time it happened, he was on a beach, drunk, making out with a girl. While he was still kissing her, he unleashed the acid and pretty much melted her face. She survived, but Axel never forgot what happened and kinda went into a trauma. And that was mostly because he couldn't remember her name and kept having nightmares about it. He started to believe that if he could remember her name, all of this would stop. But nope. So despite the trauma, Axel managed to turn his power into a brand. He joined hands with billionaire Spike Freeman and a washed-up hero named The Coach. Axel became the reluctant face of the celebrity mutant group X-Force. He had the fame, the press, the attention, but surprisingly enough, he hated all of it, including the fans, the spotlight, even his own team. Especially his team. Then came Edith Sawyer. She teleported straight into his life, quite literally, during this red carpet event. Axel noticed her talent and brought her into X-Force as You Go Girl. They started dating, though honestly, nobody's sure how far they took it. Acid bile doesn't really set the mood when you're under the sheets. Years later, Zeitgeist would actually kidnap You Go Girl's daughter to serve as his new super team's teleporter. In Deadpool 2, Axel gets a second life on screen. Played by Bill Skarsgård, yes, the same amazing actor who played Pennywise the Clown in the It movies, Zeitgeist appears as one of the newest recruits for Deadpool's version of X-Force, which you would know was a disaster if you've watched the movie. He explains his acid-spitting powers during the interview, lands the job, and jumps into action. From a parachute. So yeah, he literally jumped into action. The plan was that the X-Force members would shoot their way onto a prison convoy and rescue a kid. But high winds and bad luck wipe out the whole team, including someone called Brad Pitt. Zeitgeist flies straight into a wood chipper. Peter tries to save him, but Axel panics and pukes acid on him. So, 2 for 1. In the comics and film, he wears a mask to avoid accidents, which makes sense since his bile can burn through metal in under 30 seconds. Robbie Rodriguez. Robbie Rodriguez started as a stuntman on Ecstatics the movie, the not-so-accurate dramatization of the team's life. His break into the real squad came after he saved them from Sharon Ginsburg, a mutant with a grudge and no wings. She blamed Ecstatics for the loss. Robbie took her down with help from his sentient skateboard, which responded to his thoughts like a loyal but unpredictable pet. Yep. So our guy Robbie didn't really have any superpowers, but he developed a relationship with his sentient skateboard, which was the one with powers. Anyway, the superhero team liked his look, saw youth appeal, and signed him on, but fitting in wasn't easy for Robbie. Ecstatics lived like they'd never die, as I've signaled earlier as well. They were part superheroes, part fame-chasing lunatics. Robbie tried to stay grounded, tried to stay loyal to his girlfriend Consuela, but then came the models, and Robbie cheated on his girlfriend, so she left. Now the skateboard, which had a thing for her, went ballistic and attacked Robbie. So yeah, Robbie has a real strange power, or no power at all if I'm being honest. Fabius Medina, aka Gold Balls or Egg. Fabius Medina found out he was a mutant during an attempted robbery on a street in San Diego. In the middle of the panic, his body started launching gold-colored spheres in every direction. The crowd scattered, the cops showed up, and he got cuffed like a living pinball machine. Then Cyclops and the X-Men arrived, only to blast through a few Sentinels and bailed Gold Balls out. At first, Fabio wanted no part of it, but something clicked and he followed them anyway. He ended up tagging along to Ava Bell's house, got dragged into limbo during Dormammu's latest Chaos stunt, and survived a face-off with the Avengers. Not a bad start for a guy who shoots golden eggs from his chest. They call him Gold Balls. He didn't pick the name, but it stuck. His powers sound dumb until you see them in action. He fires gold-colored orbs, fast, concussive, and loud enough to make that weird poink noise on contact. He can control the direction, shoot them in straight lines, even reabsorb them into his body. When calm, they vanish entirely. There's no limit to how many he can generate. No one knows what they're made of, but it's not gold. At first, it looked like a joke power. Turns out, it's the opposite. Years later, the X-Men discovered that these balls are actually non-viable eggs. And when combined with the right set of mutant abilities, such as time manipulation, DNA imprinting, or psychic guidance, the Gold Balls become the foundation of the mutant resurrection protocols. So yeah, Gold Balls, of all people, helped make death reversible. He still walks around with one of the goofiest codenames in the Marvel Universe, but Fabius becoming something more than the punchline. He's proof that weird powers don't always stay weird forever. Sometimes they save lives. Sometimes they bring them back. He became a part of the Five on Krakoa. These were 5 mutants who could resurrect mutants who had died before their time. The other members of the 5 were Elixir, Tempest, Proteus, and Hope Summers, the mutant messiah. Melody Jacobs, aka Threnody. Melody Jacobs had a gift tied to death, literally. She could sense when someone was dying and absorb the neuroplasmic energy they would release. That energy let her fire powerful concussive blasts. After being murdered and feeding on her own death energy, Melody came back, and with resurrection came a power upgrade. Now she could raise the dead, turn them into zombies, and command them like loyal foot soldiers. Basically the Marvel version of the Night King. These zombies, however, were not slow like the whites, but fought with strength and were pretty agile for zombies. But the obvious and expected side effect of utilizing such dark energies came later. Melody became addicted to the sensation, to the taste of it. Her powers spun out of control, and the agony from mutants dying across the globe, especially from the legacy virus, pushed her toward a breakdown. She ended up homeless in New York, only to be found by Abomination, who brought her into an underground refuge. They called her Threnody, named after her cries. When she accidentally killed a few of the others, she fled and landed in Los Angeles. Eventually, she took shelter in the lab of Gordon Lefferts, the virus's first recorded victim. When the X-Men arrived, Threnody startled them with how much she already knew. Rogue followed her and found her in the arms of Mr. Sinister. Later, she found Nate Gray in Sinister's files and hid his name, and believed that he could help her escape. In fact, she also gave birth to a child affected by her powers, but unfortunately, this child was undead and barely alive. To feed it, she joined the Assassin's Guild, and that's where she met Deadpool, who she saved from being killed. With Deadpool, death was always around the corner, and yet it was never enough for her. Eventually, she kidnapped a pregnant woman to feed on her unborn child's energy, but she had crossed a line, and Deadpool stops her by ending the very thing she was trying to save. And although she understood why he did what he did, she warned him never to come before her ever again. Tyke Alakar, aka Anarchist. So we've seen the guy who can turn into ice cream and the one who can puke acid. This one here, he sweats acidic stuff. For most mutants, their powers surface for the first time during some traumatic or intense moment. But for Tyke Alakar, better known as the Anarchist, it all started with soap. Raised by white foster parents in the Midwest, Tyke spent part of his childhood trying to scrub the dirt off his skin until the soap burned straight through the sink. That's when he learned his sweat was acid. Over time, he figured out how to channel that acidic secretion into something more precise in the form of blasts of energy. So he would shoot corrosive beams strong enough to vaporize steel. Later in his life, he joined the mutant group called Ecstatics and built a whole persona around it. Now he was loud, militant, unapologetically black, and media savvy. He knew how to play angles. Ecstatics was originally X-Force and had lost a member in the field, so Tyke was brought in to fill the slot and to bring heat in more ways than one. On the surface, he leaned into the camera, kept the headlines sensational, and basically kept the team relevant. However, he hid his obsessive-compulsive tendencies and his real family history because these were things that didn't fit the image. He got close to Dead Girl after she saved his life. The two even left the team together for a while to tour as the Death and Anarchy Roadshow. But when Orphan took on a suicide mission, they returned, helped defeat a dangerous mutant named Arnie Lunt, and stuck around. One thing led to another, and it was revealed that people from his team were actually selling WMDs to Saddam Hussein. As far as his strange powers are concerned, Anarchist's acid, at its most concentrated, it breaks down concrete and metal in seconds. But Tyke can also control the output and only fire subtle bursts. For instance, he once rolled a dice with his powers and peeled off paint without leaving any trace as such. Once metabolized, the sweat turns into bright blue energy blasts that shoot from his palms. He could also produce a sticky adhesive, useful for keeping enemies stuck in place or climbing walls when needed. It's not the most glamorous power set, but when life gives you lemons... Cruz. Brian Cruz joined the Hellions after Emma Frost rebuilt the school, and he took the code name Tag. He never pushed back on orders, and usually followed Hellions' lead without hesitation. He fit into the squad well enough, even if he wasn't the loudest or flashiest mutant around. When the Kingmaker offered to grant each Hellion their deepest wish, Brian didn't ask for power or fame. He wished for the team to stay close, to keep hanging out. That was the kind of guy he was. Then came M-Day. Most mutants lost their powers overnight. Emma decided those without abilities should leave the school for their own safety. Some left right away. Brian stayed as long as he could, dragging out his time at the mansion. When the day came, he boarded the bus with Dryad Network and the rest, saying quiet goodbyes. But that bus never made it far. A missile, courtesy of Stryker's purifiers, destroyed it. Everyone on board died. Years passed, and then Brian came back, reborn on Krakoa through the mutant resurrection protocols developed by the Five. Powers intact. Memory restored. Tag was alive again, and seen talking with Bevatron and other old Hellions at the Academa's habitat. He showed up at the Academy X reunion, along with dozens of other students who'd died during the post-M-Day violence. Krakoa gave him a new start. Later, he joined Bishop's response team to help during the Milford crisis. He used his powers to assist with evacuation, quote-unquote tagging buildings, and vehicles to help direct movement. Tag's power worked like a psychic version of playground rules. When he touched someone and said, "You're it," they started broadcasting a psionic signal. Depending on his intention, people would either run toward them or away from them. He could choose who responded and who didn't. And though those caught in the effect stayed fully aware, they couldn't resist. The signal cut out once the target moved about 100 feet from the others. He could also tag someone to be avoided personally, like making a threat disappear from the room without touching a single person. Adam Narimani, aka Adam X. When Adam X first found himself on Earth with zero memory of his past, things were confusing, to put it mildly. Desperate for answers, he ended up at the doorstep of Martin Strong, a wealthy industrialist who offered to help uncover Adam's lost identity. All Adam had to do in return was bring mutants to Strong Industries, where they would supposedly be safe. It sounded fair enough, so Adam started working. He first befriended fellow mutant Michelle Balters, also known as Neurotap. But nothing's ever that simple, is it? Strong Industries, it turned out, had darker intentions, secretly funded by Project Wide Awake to develop tech designed to eliminate mutant genes. When Balters discovered the truth, she escaped, and Strong sent Adam to bring her back. Around this time, X-Force was already nosing around Strong's questionable activities. Their paths collided as Adam X hunted down Balters, but he and X-Force discovered that Martin Strong was himself a mutant, so they joined forces. Bonding over their shared alien roots and love for a good brawl, Adam X and Shatterstar became particularly close. X-Force offered Adam a place in their team, which he politely declined, and chose to keep searching for clues about who he really was. Now, Adam X is a pretty strong mutant. He's got this power called blood burning. What is it, you ask? Well, it is exactly what it sounds like. And by saturating his target's blood with oxygen, usually by cutting them, he sends an electric charge that ignites their blood, effectively burning them from the inside out. It ranges from a mild sting to full-on incineration, and he can even trigger it with a quote-unquote burn command. Adam X can also ignite his own blood, which temporarily enhances his speed but causes intense pain. Interestingly, he's immune to the powers of his half-brothers, Cyclops and Havoc, and vice versa. Oh yeah, his mother was Catherine Summers, which also makes Jean Grey his maternal sister-in-law. Being a Shi'ar mutant hybrid also means he's naturally stronger, faster, and tougher than you. Maximus Jensen, aka Mammomax. Not much is known about Maximus Jensen's early life. What is clear is that once his mutation came to life, he was welcomed by humanity with the usual fear, rejection, and isolation. You see, he had developed elephant-like features and bulk to match it, and apart from that, he could spit his stomach acid on you to kill you. But the treatment he received from humans, well, let's just say that that sort of treatment doesn't breed kindness. It left him bitter, angry, and looking for a place to belong. Eventually, he joined a rebranded Brotherhood of Evil Mutants under Exodus, who promised a mutant revolution. Their first assignment was to attack regular people in Philadelphia. It backfired, of course, because Iceman took Mammomax down with little to no effort. They regrouped and attacked the Xavier Institute. But that went sideways too. Juggernaut beat Mammomax down, and then Zorn warped them all into a pocket dimension. Mammomax, bruised and unimpressed, realized too late he had signed up with amateurs. Later, however, Exodus managed to get them back to Earth, but the Brotherhood fell apart. Then M-Day arrived, the same event where Wanda Maximoff depowered most mutants. Hunted by the Sapien League, he was nearly burned alive outside the Xavier Institute. The X-Men stopped the attack and brought him inside, where he became one of the 198, or the remaining mutants still powered post-decimation. They lived in tents on Institute grounds under heavy surveillance. Anyway, later in his life, he actually died but was brought back by the Five on Krakoa. Evangelene Weeden. Evangelene Weeden had what any woman could want from life. She was a successful prosecutor, she was engaged, and had stability in life. Then word got out that she was a mutant, and everything fell apart in under 48 hours. She was fired from her job, evicted from her apartment, dumped by her fiancé, and disowned by her family. So she did what most mutants do when the world turns its back: she joined the fight. Weeden becomes a key voice in the Mutant Rights Coalition and didn't shy away from the front lines. When Bishop and Sage were locked up, she helped organize a protest to pressure the cops. A brick hit Detective Cardon's during the protest, and when his blood landed on Weeden, the next thing we know, her mutation kicked in. She transformed into this massive dragon-like beast and started attacking everything in sight. Sage held her back long enough for Bishop to get through to her, and she managed to calm down and return to human form. Furthermore, Evangelene was one of the few mutants who kept their powers after M-Day, and that put her on the government's radar as a serious threat. So yeah, she was kind of like the cross between the Hulk and Daredevil. She fought for those who could not fight for themselves, but instead of heightened senses, she could transform into a mindless dragon. So yeah, that was all in this one, guys. If you know of some mutant with obnoxious powers, or want us to replace someone on this list with your own suggestions, you know where to let us know.